Hey guys, today I'm going to show you a game played by Peter Svidler against Garry Kasparov. This game was played in the 1999 Linares tournament in Spain. And this isn't one of those games where Kasparov sacrifices a piece and gets a massive attack, but rather it shows a more positional approach from Kasparov, where he uses the bishop pair to his advantage. So in this game, Svidler had white and Kasparov has black. Peter opens with e4, Kasparov plays the Sicilian defense c5, knight to f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, and here the standard reply is knight takes d4. But Svidler goes for queen takes d4, and after knight to c6, the idea is to play bishop to b5 and give up your bishop for the knight, in order to get rapid development. Bishop to d7, breaking the pin, bishop takes c6, bishop takes c6, so Kasparov has managed to get the bishop pair. Knight to c3, knight to f6, bishop to g5, preparing the castle queenside, e6, castles queenside for white, bishop to e7, rook h to e1, we have castles for black, king to b1, tucking the king out of the c file, and also in some cases the bishop can drop back to c1. h6, bishop to h4, rook to e8, bishop to g3, putting pressure on d6, and here we have d5 from Kasparov, putting pressure on e4. So here capturing the pawn wouldn't pose much problems for black, because after queen takes d5 with moves like bishop f6 coming, and if white captures on d5, then this position, black doesn't have any problems in this position, and in fact he would be slightly better because of his bishop pair. Here Svidler could try something like knight to e5, trying to go after this bishop, but he plays e5, trying to close down the center. And here a move like knight to h5 seems normal, but Kasparov understood this position quite well and he went for knight to e4. So he is willing to go into an endgame down a pawn, but he is relying on his bishop pair and he hopes that that would be enough. So Svidler goes into it, knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes d8, rook takes d8, knight to d4. So trying to remove the defender of this e4 pawn, and black doesn't want to allow this. He wants to keep his bishop pair, so he goes bishop to e8, c3, solidifying the knight first before capturing here, rook a to c8, king to c2, trying to support c3 because black might be planning to expand on the queen side to weaken this c3 point. b5, rook captures on e4, white now takes the pawn, b4, trying to destroy white's pawn structure, rook to e3, so now pawn captures can be met with rook captures on c3. We have a5, knight to e2 from Svidler, well, probably trying to alleviate the pressure of this position by trading rooks and also adding some extra protection to c3. But this does allow black to jump to place his bishop on c6 because it's not protected by the knight on d4 now. So bishop to c6 from Kasparov, going after the pawn on g2, provoking white to play f3. We have an exchange of rooks, and here you can see the power of the two bishops, bishop to c5. So you can see that these bishops look quite menacing, slicing along the long diagonals. Rook to d3, so the only square for the rook. We have bishop to b5, rook to d2, again the only square. Bishop to e3, rook comes to d6. Here pawn captures on c3, knight takes c3, and bishop to f1. Eyeing the weakness on g2, and this can't really be defended for the moment. So what do you play here as white? Well, you can't really move the pawns on the queen side. If you move the a pawn, then b2 becomes a target. And similarly, you can't play b3. This knight will fall. And if you try and play something like, rook to d7, putting your rook on the 7th rank, but what does that accomplish? Nothing much really, because there are no targets to attack. These points are defended well by the king at the moment. And here Svidler decides to play bishop to h4, just waiting because there's nothing much he can do but g5 from Kasparov, so kicking the bishop back, bishop to e1, bishop takes g2, king to e2, defending this point, and here bishop to f4, so going after the pawn on h2, and if this pawn falls, well then black has a very strong pass pawn on h6. So bishop to g3, we have bishop to c1, so now eyeing b2, and you can see just how good the two bishops are because they are long-range pieces and they can move freely across one side of the board to another. Knight to a4, defending this point, h5, so the plan is simply h4, followed by, after the bishop is kicked back, followed by bishop to f4, attacking this point. Rook to d1, h4, bishop goes back, now bishop to f4, and we have bishop to c3, defending this pawn, king to g7, and here knight to b6, king to g7. The idea behind that was to allow rook to h8. So now that the rook is under attack, rook to h8 from Kasparov, supporting this potential pass pawn. We have king to f2, h3 defending the bishop, here bishop to d2, bishop takes h2, here white could play bishop takes g5, but after bishop takes e5, black has moves like rook to h5, followed by rook to f5, putting pressure on f3. And white also has to watch out for h2, h1 queen. But Svidler didn't play bishop takes g5, instead he played knight to d7. But it really doesn't matter anyway in this position, because white is simply losing. After king to g6, we have bishop to e3, and here Kasparov plays g4, so trying to open up this diagonal for his bishop. After pawn captures, we have bishop to c6, and in this position, Peter Svidler resigned the game. So the threat is to play rook to d8, winning this knight, and if white were to play a move like knight to c5, this pawn is no longer defended, so simply you snap that off with the bishop, followed by h2, h1 queen. A very nice game from Kasparov, demonstrating the power of the bishop pair. And sometimes you might even be down a pawn, but having the bishop pair is more than enough compensation, sometimes even for a win, as we can see in this game. And it's hard to pinpoint exactly where Svidler went wrong. Perhaps he should have played knight to e5, going after the light square bishop instead of closing down the center with e5. But nevertheless, a very instructive game from Kasparov. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you do, please subscribe for more future content. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.